This path changes everything. The Jedi survive, Anakin never becomes Vader, and Palpatine's grand plan collapses. Anakin Skywalker stood in the Jedi Temple, torn between duty and fear. The dark whispers of Chancellor Palpatine's promises weighed on his heart, but for the first time, Anakin silenced them. When Mace Windu prepared to confront the Chancellor, Anakin chose to stand at his side. He was determined to end the shadow that had poisoned the galaxy. Together, they entered the Chancellor's office. Palpatine rose from his chair, his voice calm, but his eyes burning with anger. When the Jedi accused him of being Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord finally revealed his true face. Red blades of lightning erupted from his hands, and his lightsaber ignited with a hiss. The battle was fierce. Palpatine struck down with terrible speed, but Anakin and Mace fought as one. The other Jedi joined in, their blades forming a wall of light against the storm of the Sith. This time, Palpatine was not facing one master alone. He could not twist Anakin's doubts, nor could he strike down Windu with a single blow. Anakin moved with purpose, his blue blade slicing through the shadows. He disarmed the Sith, and with Windu's final strike, Palpatine was forced to the ground. Sparks flew, the Chancellor's weapon clattered away, and for the first time in years, Darth Sidious knew fear. The Jedi did not kill him. They bound him, and together carried him to the Senate. The chamber was filled with gasps and cries as his crimes were revealed. The galaxy learned that their leader was the architect of the Clone Wars. Without Sidious, the order to destroy the Jedi never came. Order 66 was never spoken. The clones remained loyal soldiers, and the Jedi Order lived on. The war soon began to end. Count Dooku's remaining forces scattered, and peace slowly returned. Anakin, no longer bound by fear, grew into a hero celebrated across the Republic. He returned to Padme not as a broken man, but as the Jedi who had saved them all. Mace Windu's name became honored among the people, yet new challenges awaited. Power still tempted politicians, and old wounds lingered. But with the Jedi standing strong and Anakin Skywalker leading with hope, the galaxy's future was no longer ruled by darkness. Anakin Skywalker walked through the Jedi Temple with heavy steps, his mind filled with doubt. For so long he had been caught between his loyalty to the Jedi and the whispers of Chancellor Palpatine. But when the moment came, he chose his path. He would not betray his order. He would not betray himself. When Mace Windu called for him, Anakin joined without hesitation. Together, they marched into the Chancellor's chambers. Palpatine stood waiting, calm but full of menace. His voice was smooth, promising power and control, but the truth was no longer hidden. The Jedi declared him for what he was, Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who had brought war to the galaxy. With a flash of red, Palpatine drew his blade, striking with the fury of a storm. But this time, the fight was not won against a single Jedi Master. Anakin's blue blade clashed against the Sith's crimson weapon, while Mace Windu's violet lightsaber struck with perfect precision. The other Jedi joined, their weapons forming a circle of light. The battle was fierce, the walls of the chamber shaking with each strike. Lightning surged from Palpatine's fingers, but Anakin met it head-on, his strength and courage steady. Together with Windu, he pushed the Sith back step by step. For all his cunning, Palpatine could not break Anakin's will. At last, Sidious faltered. Anakin struck his saber aside, and Mace pressed forward, knocking the Sith to the floor. Palpatine lay disarmed, his power stripped away. For the first time, silence filled the room. Bound in chains, Palpatine was brought before the Senate. The galaxy watched in shock as his lies and plots were revealed. The man they once trusted was unmasked as the darkness behind the war. With no command for Order 66, the Jedi were spared. The clones remained soldiers of the Republic, and the Jedi Order endured. Anakin's name spread through the stars as the Jedi who saved the Republic. He returned to Padme with peace in his heart, no longer haunted by fear. And though challenges remained in the galaxy, Anakin had chosen the light, and the shadow of Darth Sidious was broken. Anakin Skywalker stood in silence, his thoughts torn between fear and duty. For days he had struggled with the promises of Chancellor Palpatine, who spoke of power, of saving lives, and of ending death. Yet deep inside, Anakin knew the truth. The Chancellor was not a savior. He was the darkness the Jedi had been searching for. When Mace Windu prepared to confront him, Anakin made his choice. He would stand with the Jedi. They entered Palpatine's grand chamber together. The Chancellor rose slowly from his seat, his eyes glowing with anger, his words dripping with false calm. Mace Windu declared him the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious, the true enemy of the Republic. With a sudden hiss, a crimson blade lit the room, and Palpatine struck with lightning speed. The clash was immediate. Mace Windu's violet saber cut with perfect control, while Anakin's blue blade met the storm head-on. The two Jedi fought as one, joined by their companions. Sparks filled the air, and the walls shook with every strike. Palpatine raged, twisting his words to tempt Anakin, urging him to betray the Jedi. But Anakin's heart no longer wavered. His choice had already been made. The battle stretched on, fierce and unrelenting. Palpatine unleashed his lightning, yet Anakin held firm, blocking the storm and pressing forward. Step by step, the Sith was forced back. For all his cunning, his plans unraveled before the strength of unity. At last, Palpatine faltered. With one swift movement, Anakin struck the weapon from his hand, sending the crimson saber crashing to the floor. Mace Windu advanced, his blade steady, and together they forced the Sith Lord down. The once mighty Chancellor lay bound in defeat, his face twisted with fury. He was carried before the Senate, exposed at last. Senators gasped as the truth was revealed. Their leader was the very shadow that had driven the galaxy to war. Without his command, Order 66 never came. The clones remained loyal to the Republic, and the Jedi Order lived on. Anakin returned to Padme with peace instead of despair. He was hailed as the hero who chose the light, and though the galaxy faced new trials, hope had returned where darkness once ruled. Anakin Skywalker stood in the dim halls of the Jedi Temple, his heart racing with conflict. For so long he had feared losing Padme, and Palpatine's words of secret power had tempted him. But when the truth became clear, Anakin knew he could not betray the Jedi. He turned away from the whispers of the Sith and chose to join Mace Windu. Together, they walked into the Chancellor's office. Palpatine rose from his chair with a cold smile, his voice smooth and dangerous. Mace Windu declared that the game was over, that the Chancellor was in truth Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who had plunged the galaxy into war. Palpatine's face twisted with rage as a crimson blade leapt to life. With a scream, he struck at the Jedi, his speed unnatural, his power overwhelming. Yet this time, he did not face a single master alone. Mace Windu's violet saber met him with precision, and Anakin's blue blade clashed with unshakable determination. The other Jedi added their strength, and the chamber erupted into a storm of light and shadow. The fight was brutal. Palpatine hurled lightning across the room, sparks burning into the walls, but Anakin blocked it, pushing forward step by step. The Sith's words filled the air, urging Anakin to claim power, to rule, to save Padme. But the young Jedi's mind was clear. He remembered his vow, he remembered the code, and he stood firm against temptation. Together with Windu, Anakin pressed the Sith Lord back. Their blades struck as one, and Palpatine stumbled. His lightsaber was cut from his grasp, spinning away across the chamber. Mace held his blade steady, while Anakin forced Palpatine to the floor. The Dark Lord, once so untouchable, was bound and defeated. Dragged before the Senate, Palpatine's crimes were laid bare. The people gasped as they learned the truth, that their Chancellor was the master of the war, the shadow behind every loss. With no command for Order 66, the Jedi were spared, and the clones remained true soldiers of the Republic. Anakin's choice changed everything. He returned to Padme with peace in his heart, hailed across the stars as the Jedi who chose light over darkness, and hope spread through the galaxy once more. Anakin Skywalker stood in the silent halls of the Jedi Temple, his mind torn by fear and hope. For weeks the words of Chancellor Palpatine had weighed upon him, whispering of forbidden power, of the ability to save Padme from death. But Anakin's heart told him the truth. Palpatine was no friend, no savior. He was the Sith Lord that the Jedi had hunted for so long. At last, Anakin made his choice. He would not betray the Jedi. He would not betray himself. When Mace Windu prepared to confront the Chancellor, Anakin stepped forward. He would go with him. The two warriors, joined by other Jedi Masters, marched through the grand corridors until they reached Palpatine's chamber. The Chancellor greeted them with calm words and a dark smile. His voice was smooth, almost kind, but his eyes burned with fury. Mace Windu declared that his rule was over. He was Darth Sidious, architect of the Clone Wars, enemy of peace. With a hiss, a red blade ignited. Palpatine struck with a roar of rage, moving with terrible speed. But this time, he did not face Mace Windu alone. Anakin's blue saber joined the fight, and the other Jedi surrounded the Sith Lord. Sparks lit the chamber as blades clashed again and again, filling the room with flashes of light and shadow. Palpatine hurled lightning with both hands, thunder echoing through the chamber. Yet Anakin stood firm, his blade catching the storm, his heart unshaken. The Sith's voice was venom, promising Anakin power, promising life without loss. But the young Jedi turned away from temptation. He remembered his oath to the Jedi, and he remembered Padme's love built on trust, not fear. Step by step, the Jedi pressed Palpatine back. Mace Windu struck with precision, Anakin with resolve, and together they broke the Sith's defense. With one final clash, Palpatine's blade was sent flying. He stumbled, falling to the floor, his power stripped away. The great Darth Sidious lay bound in defeat. Brought before the Senate, his crimes were revealed to the galaxy. Senators gasped in horror as the truth became clear. The man they had trusted was the shadow behind every battle, every death, every lie. Without his command, Order 66 never came. The clones remained loyal, and the Jedi order endured. Anakin returned to Padme with peace in his heart, no longer chained by fear. Across the Republic, his name was spoken as the hero who had chosen the light, and with the shadow lifted, hope returned to the stars. Anakin Skywalker stood in the shadows of the Jedi Temple, his thoughts heavy with fear and doubt. For so long he had listened to Chancellor Palpatine's words, whispers of power, whispers of the ability to save Padme. Yet deep inside, he felt the truth pressing on his soul. Palpatine was no protector of peace. He was the darkness itself, Darth Sidious, the hidden master of the Sith. In that moment, Anakin chose. He would not betray the Jedi. He would stand with them. When Mace Windu prepared to face the Chancellor, Anakin stepped forward. His voice was steady. He would go too. Together they marched through the long halls, their footsteps echoing like drums of destiny, until they reached Palpatine's chambers. The Chancellor greeted them with a calm mask, but his eyes glowed with fury. Mace Windu declared his crimes openly. The war, the corruption, the lies, all were his design. At last the truth could not be hidden. With a sudden blaze of crimson, Palpatine's lightsaber sprang to life. His attack was like a storm, fierce and unrelenting. Yet this time, the battle was not against one Jedi alone. Mace Windu's violet blade met his strikes with precision. Anakin's blue saber clashed with fearless resolve. The other Jedi formed a circle, their weapons flashing like lightning. The room shook with the fury of battle. Palpatine unleashed a torrent of dark energy, bolts of lightning flooding the chamber. Sparks scorched the walls, but Anakin held his ground, blocking the storm and pressing forward. The Sith's voice cut through the chaos, tempting him again with promises of power, of Padme's life saved, of a future built on control. But Anakin's heart was clear. He would not surrender to fear. He would not betray Padme by becoming a monster. He stood firm beside Mace Windu, and together they pushed the Sith Lord back. At last, Palpatine faltered. Anakin struck his saber from his hand, sending the red blade spinning across the chamber. Mace Windu pressed forward, and the Dark Lord stumbled to the floor. Bound and defeated, the mighty Darth Sidious was no more than a prisoner. Before the Senate, the galaxy saw the truth. Palpatine's mask was gone, his lies revealed. The people gasped in horror as the dark secret of their leader came to light. Without his command, Order 66 never came. The clone stood loyal, and the Jedi survived. Anakin returned to Padme with peace in his heart. Across the Republic, his name was spoken as the Jedi who chose light over shadow, and hope once more filled the stars. Anakin Skywalker walked the halls of the Jedi Temple with his mind burning in conflict. The words of Chancellor Palpatine echoed inside him, promises of power and the ability to stop death itself. Yet the truth weighed heavier. Palpatine was no savior. He was Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who had twisted the galaxy into endless war. Anakin's fear was strong, but his loyalty to the Jedi was stronger. He chose his path. He would not betray his order. When Mace Windu prepared to confront the Chancellor, Anakin stepped forward to join him. The moment was heavy with destiny. Together, with other Jedi Masters, they strode into Palpatine's chambers. Palpatine rose slowly from his chair, his smile cold, his eyes burning with dark fire. His voice was smooth, almost gentle, as he tried to twist Anakin with promises once again. But Mace Windu's voice cut through the air, declaring him Darth Sidious, the true enemy of the Republic. The Sith Lord cast aside his mask. With a sudden strike, a crimson blade filled the room with its red glow. He attacked with fury, his movements blinding, his power shaking the chamber itself. Yet this was not the duel Palpatine had planned. Mace Windu's violet blade struck with controlled precision, while Anakin's blue saber cut forward with fearless strength. The other Jedi joined the battle, their lightsabers flashing like a storm of light. The fight was fierce. Palpatine unleashed lightning from his hands, bolts crackling across the room, scorching the walls. Anakin braced himself, his saber catching the storm, holding it back. The Sith's voice rose louder, shouting temptations, urging Anakin to betray the Jedi, to claim power for himself, to save Padme through the dark side. But Anakin's heart was clear. He saw through the lies. He knew that surrendering to darkness would destroy everything he loved. Side by side with Mace Windu, he pushed the Sith Lord back step by step. At last, Palpatine faltered. Anakin struck his saber aside, sending it spinning across the floor. Mace Windu pressed forward, and the great Sith Lord stumbled and fell. Bound in defeat, Palpatine was dragged before the Senate. The galaxy gasped in shock as his crimes were revealed. Their leader was the shadow of war itself. Without his command, Order 66 never came. The Jedi survived, the clones stayed loyal, and peace returned. Anakin returned to Padme, his heart free of fear. Across the stars his name was spoken as the Jedi who chose the light, and hope rose again where darkness once ruled. Anakin Skywalker stood in the quiet corridors of the Jedi Temple, his heart heavy with fear and doubt. Chancellor Palpatine's words still echoed in his mind, whispering of power, whispering of a way to save Padme from death. Yet in his soul, Anakin felt the truth pressing down on him. Palpatine was no protector. He was the Sith Lord, Darth Sidious, the enemy the Jedi had searched for. In that moment of clarity, Anakin chose. He would not fall to darkness. He would stand with the Jedi. When Mace Windu prepared to confront the Chancellor, Anakin stepped forward and joined him. Their footsteps rang like thunder as they marched through the grand halls until they reached the office of the most powerful man in the Republic. Palpatine rose from his seat, calm in his voice but burning with anger in his eyes. He tried again to sway Anakin, promising him strength, promising him life beyond loss. But Mace Windu spoke with certainty, naming him for what he truly was. The war, the suffering, the corruption, all had been his doing. With a hiss, Palpatine's crimson blade ignited, and the battle began. His strikes came like lightning, fast and furious. But this time he was not facing one Jedi Master alone. Mace Windu's violet saber clashed with his every move, and Anakin's blue blade struck with courage and resolve. The other Jedi surrounded the Sith, their lightsabers flashing in unison. The chamber shook with the fury of combat. Palpatine unleashed his power, filling the air with bolts of dark lightning. Sparks burned into the walls, thunder echoed through the room, but Anakin held his ground. His saber caught the storm, and his heart resisted the temptation. Palpatine's words filled the air, urging him to claim power, urging him to betray the Jedi. But Anakin's mind was clear. He would not trade love for darkness. Step by step, the Jedi pressed forward. Palpatine's defense broke. Anakin struck his saber from his hand, sending it crashing to the floor. Mace Windu advanced, and together they forced the Sith Lord down. The mighty Darth Sidious was bound in defeat. Before the Senate, his crimes were revealed. The galaxy gasped as the mask fell away, their Chancellor exposed as the master of evil. Without his order, the clones never turned. The Jedi survived, the war began to end, and the Republic saw a new dawn. Anakin returned to Padme with peace in his heart, his name spoken across the stars as the Jedi who chose the light when it mattered most. Anakin Skywalker stood alone in the Jedi Temple, his thoughts storming like the war raging across the galaxy. The voice of Chancellor Palpatine echoed in his mind, promising him power, promising him the chance to save Padme from death. But in the silence, Anakin's heart spoke louder. He knew the truth. Palpatine was no savior. He was the darkness, Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord behind every battle and every lie. For the first time, Anakin saw clearly. He would not betray the Jedi. He would stand with them. When Mace Windu gathered Jedi Masters to confront the Chancellor, Anakin stepped forward. His decision was made. Together, they marched through the grand corridors until they reached Palpatine's office. The Chancellor stood waiting, his voice smooth, his face calm, but his eyes burned with fire. He tried to twist Anakin with promises of control and life without loss. But Mace Windu declared the truth. Palpatine was Darth Sidious, the enemy of peace. With a sudden roar, Palpatine's crimson blade leapt into the air. The chamber erupted in light as he struck, his speed and fury overwhelming. But this battle was not what he had planned. Mace Windu's violet saber clashed with his every strike, and Anakin's blue blade cut forward with strength and purpose. The other Jedi surrounded him, their sabers blazing like stars in the storm. The fight shook the chamber. Palpatine unleashed lightning from his hands, bolts tearing into the walls, thunder echoing through the air. But Anakin stood firm, his saber catching the storm. The Sith's voice rose, urging him to betray the Jedi, urging him to claim his destiny. Yet Anakin's heart was steady. He would not give in. He fought not for power, but for Padme, for the Jedi, for the Republic. Step by step, the Jedi pressed him back. Palpatine faltered under their combined strength. With a powerful strike, Anakin knocked the red saber from his hand. It fell, spinning across the floor. Mace Windu pressed forward, his blade steady, and together they forced the Sith Lord down. Palpatine was bound, dragged before the Senate. His mask of lies was stripped away, his crimes revealed to the galaxy. Senators gasped in horror as their leader was shown to be the shadow of war itself. Without his order, the clones never turned. The Jedi endured. The war began to end. Anakin returned to Padme with peace instead of fear, his name spoken across the stars as the Jedi who chose the light when darkness called. Anakin Skywalker stood within the halls of the Jedi Temple, his heart torn between fear and duty. For weeks the words of Chancellor Palpatine had echoed in his mind, filling him with promises of power, promises of saving Padme from death. Yet beneath those whispers Anakin felt the truth. Palpatine was not a protector of peace. He was Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who had poisoned the Republic and brought endless war. In that moment of clarity, Anakin made his choice. He would not betray the Jedi. He would stand with them. When Mace Windu prepared to confront the Chancellor, Anakin joined him. The weight of destiny filled the air as the group of Jedi Masters entered Palpatine's chamber. The Chancellor rose from his seat with a calm voice but a dangerous gleam in his eyes. He tried once more to sway Anakin with honeyed words, promising him the power to shape the galaxy, the strength to save the one he loved. But Mace Windu spoke firmly, naming him for what he was: Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord, the architect of suffering. Palpatine's mask of civility vanished. With a sudden flash of crimson light, his saber ignited. He leapt forward with speed and fury, his strikes raining down like thunder. But this time, he did not face one Jedi alone. Mace Windu's violet blade struck with precision, and Anakin's blue saber joined the clash with fierce resolve. The other Jedi surrounded the Sith, their lightsabers blazing like stars piercing the darkness. The chamber roared with battle. Palpatine unleashed lightning from his hands, bolts cracking against the walls, the air alive with fire. Anakin stood firm, his blade catching the storm. The Sith's voice rose, desperate and sharp, urging him to betray the Jedi, to take power, to rule. But Anakin's mind was clear. He would not surrender to fear. He would not give himself to shadow. Together, Anakin and Mace pressed forward. Step by step, they broke Palpatine's defense. With a final strike, Anakin sent the red saber spinning from his hand. Mace Windu advanced, and the great Sith Lord was thrown to the ground, bound and defeated. Dragged before the Senate, his crimes were revealed. Gasps filled the chamber as the truth was spoken. The Chancellor they trusted was the very master of war. Without his command, Order 66 never came. The Jedi endured, the clones remained loyal, and the war began to fade. Anakin returned to Padme, free of fear, his name carried across the stars as the Jedi who chose the light when darkness called.